The night of the event felt special from the very beginning. The concert hall was huge and beautifully decorated with bright lights, long curtains, and shiny floors that reflected everything like a mirror. Rich and powerful people filled the seats, dressed in expensive suits and elegant dresses. Soft music played in the background as guests talked quietly, holding glasses and smiling for cameras. This was not an ordinary gathering. It was a charity event meant to show class, success, and importance. In the front row sat a famous billionaire. Everyone knew his name. He was respected for his money and feared for his sharp words. People around him laughed at his jokes, even when they were rude, because no one wanted to offend a man like him. He sat confidently, looking around as if the hall belonged to him. To him, this event was just another place to show power and control. Behind the scenes, staff members moved quickly and quietly. Among them was a maid, wearing a simple uniform that made her invisible to most guests. She worked hard that night, cleaning, serving, and staying out of sight. Standing close to her was her young daughter. The maid had no choice but to bring the girl along, as she had no one to leave her with. The child stayed silent, holding her mother's hand, careful not to cause trouble. While adults talked about money and business, the little girl noticed something else. Her eyes were drawn to the grand piano placed at the center of the stage. It was black, shiny, and powerful, standing under bright lights like it was waiting for someone special. The girl stared at it with deep curiosity and quiet excitement. To her, the piano was not just an object. It felt like a voice waiting to speak. As the hall filled with noise and laughter, the girl remained calm and focused on the piano. She did not care about the rich people or the cameras. Something inside her felt connected to that instrument. No one noticed the small moment forming, but this silent attraction between a child and a piano was the beginning of something life-changing. What started as a normal event was slowly turning into a night no one would ever forget. During a short break in the event, people stood up from their seats and began talking loudly. Some laughed, some checked their phones, and others walked around to greet important guests. In this busy moment, the little girl felt braver. She gently pulled her mother's hand and pointed toward the piano on the stage. In a soft voice, she said she wished she could play it just once. Her words were innocent, full of hope, with no idea of the world she was standing in. The maid's heart skipped. She quickly looked around, afraid someone might hear. She told her daughter that this was not a place for such wishes. This piano was not for children like them. It belonged to rich people, famous musicians, and powerful guests. The mother felt embarrassed even hearing the request, knowing how harsh people could be if they noticed. But a few nearby guests did notice. They saw the child's curious eyes and heard her quiet request. Some smiled, thinking it was cute. Others laughed softly, finding it amusing that a maid's daughter would dream of touching such a grand instrument. To them, it was harmless entertainment, nothing more. Then the billionaire overheard the conversation. He turned his head slowly, his lips forming a confident smile. The idea amused him. A small girl, dressed simply, wanting to play a piano in front of the most important people in the city. It sounded like a joke to him. He raised his voice so others could hear and made a mocking comment. He said if the girl could actually play something impressive, he would give her $100 million. The room reacted instantly. Some people laughed loudly. Others whispered, enjoying the moment. Phones were lifted, ready to record what they believed would be a funny scene. The challenge was never meant to be serious. It was said with pride and arrogance, a way to show power and control while turning the child into entertainment. The maid felt her face burn with shame. She tried to pull her daughter away, apologizing quietly. She knew this situation could end badly. But the girl stood still, her eyes fixed on the piano. She did not understand money or mockery. All she felt was the chance to do something she loved. In that moment, what sounded like a cruel joke became the turning point of the night. The laughter, the challenge, and the innocent wish all collided, setting the stage for something no one was prepared to witness. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the attention. He waved his hand casually, as if giving permission for a game to begin. He told the maid not to worry and said the girl should try. His tone was calm, but there was pride and mockery hidden inside his words. To him, this was nothing more than a moment of fun, a way to make the evening more entertaining. The crowd reacted quickly. Some guests laughed louder now, feeling free to enjoy the situation because the billionaire himself encouraged it. Others whispered to each other, guessing how badly the girl would fail. A few people felt uncomfortable but stayed silent, afraid to speak against someone so powerful. Cameras were raised higher, and phones were pointed toward the stage, ready to capture what everyone expected to be an embarrassing moment. The maid's hands began to shake. She quietly begged her daughter to come back, reminding her that they did not belong on that stage. She feared that one wrong move could cost her job or bring shame to her child. Her voice was soft, full of worry, but the noise in the hall swallowed her words. The girl, however, seemed calm in a strange way. She looked around at the people laughing and whispering, but their faces did not frighten her. She was not thinking about the billionaire or the money. Her focus was on the piano, waiting silently under the bright lights. With slow steps, she walked toward it, each step echoing in the hall. The laughter slowly faded as people realized she was actually going to try. When she reached the piano, she paused. The hall felt different now, heavier, as if the air itself was holding its breath. The girl climbed onto the bench, her small body barely fitting behind the large instrument. Her feet could not reach the floor, but she adjusted herself carefully, just like someone who had done this before. A few final laughs escaped from the crowd, but they were weaker, unsure. The maid closed her eyes, unable to watch. The billionaire leaned forward slightly, still confident but now curious. In that moment, before a single note was played, the entire hall waited. What was meant to be a joke had turned into a quiet test, and no one yet understood how deeply it would change everything. The girl placed her small hands on the piano keys and took a slow breath. For a moment, nothing happened. The hall was so quiet that even a small sound felt loud. People stopped whispering, and phones remained frozen in the air. Everyone expected noise, random notes, or mistakes. No one expected control. Then the first note was played. It was soft, clear, and perfectly timed. The sound moved through the hall like a gentle wave. A second note followed, then another, each one placed with care. The melody was calm but strong, simple yet full of feeling. It did not sound like a child playing for the first time. It sounded like someone who understood the piano deeply. Faces began to change. Smiles slowly disappeared. Laughter was replaced by surprise. People leaned forward in their seats, listening closely, afraid to miss even a single note. The sound filled every corner of the hall, touching even those who had planned to laugh. The girl's posture was steady. Her fingers moved smoothly across the keys, not fast, not slow, but exactly right. She played with confidence, as if the piano was speaking through her. The bright lights above the stage reflected off the shiny surface of the instrument, making the moment feel almost unreal. The billionaire's expression changed too. At first, he looked confused. Then his eyes widened slightly. He had expected embarrassment, not beauty. Not this. The music felt familiar in a strange way, like a memory he had forgotten but suddenly remembered. The maid opened her eyes and stared at her daughter in shock. This was not something she had seen before. She knew her child loved music, but she had never imagined this level of skill. Tears slowly filled her eyes as pride replaced fear. The melody grew deeper, carrying emotion that words could not explain. It was not loud or dramatic, yet it demanded attention. The hall that once felt proud and noisy was now silent and respectful. Every person there felt something shift inside them. In that moment, the joke was gone. The challenge was forgotten. There was only the music and the child who was changing everything with each note. What had begun as laughter had turned into disbelief, and the hall had truly fallen silent as the music continued. Something strange happened to the billionaire. His confident posture slowly faded. He stopped watching the girl and began staring into the distance, as if the sound had pulled him into another time. The melody was no longer just beautiful to him. It was familiar, painfully familiar. Each note felt like a key unlocking old memories he had buried deep inside his mind. Years ago, before the money, before the fame, he had been a different man. He remembered a small apartment, late nights, and a piano that was never perfect but always honest. That melody had been written in those days, shared with someone he once trusted more than anyone else. His hands began to shake slightly. He whispered the next few notes under his breath, already knowing what was coming next. When the girl played them exactly as he remembered, his heart skipped. This piece was never published. It was never performed in public. Only 2 people in the world should have known it. The billionaire's breathing grew heavy. He tried to tell himself it was a coincidence, but deep down he knew the truth. The music carried emotion that could not be copied. It held sadness, hope, and regret woven together. It was the sound of a past he had abandoned in his race for success. Around him, the guests remained silent, unaware of the storm building inside his chest. To them, this was a talented child. To him, this was a ghost standing on stage, reminding him of promises broken and friendships lost. He looked at the maid standing near the wall. For the first time, he truly saw her, not as staff, not as background, but as a person connected to this moment. A painful thought entered his mind, one he was afraid to face. When the girl reached the final part of the melody, his eyes filled with tears. His pride, his arrogance, and his confidence cracked all at once. The music had done what no person ever could. It had forced him to remember who he once was, and what he had left behind. By the time the last notes echoed through the hall, the billionaire was no longer the same man who had laughed moments earlier. Something inside him had broken open, and there was no way to close it again. When the final note faded, the silence in the hall felt heavy and deep. No one clapped. No one spoke. It was not because the performance was bad, but because everyone felt something too strong to break with noise. The little girl slowly lifted her hands from the piano and looked around, unsure of what to do next. The billionaire stood up from his seat. The sound of his chair moving was the only noise in the room. All eyes turned toward him. His face looked pale, and the confidence he once showed was gone. He walked slowly toward the stage, his steps careful, as if he was afraid the moment might disappear. He stopped in front of the maid. His voice was quiet now, very different from before. He asked her where the girl had learned that song. The question felt simple, but everyone could sense its importance. The maid lowered her eyes. She hesitated, not knowing if she should speak at all. After a long pause, she answered softly. She said her late husband used to play that melody every night. It was the last thing their daughter heard before sleeping. Music was how he expressed love, and that song was special to him. He never wrote it down. He never recorded it. He just played it, again and again, for his family. The billionaire closed his eyes. His worst fear was now real. He asked the maid for her husband's name. When she spoke it, his body stiffened. The name hit him like a sudden, sharp and painful. That man had once been his closest friend. The one who had believed in him before success changed everything. The maid continued, unaware of how deeply her words were cutting. She explained that her husband had died years ago, leaving them with very little. Music was all he left behind, and the girl had learned by watching and listening. There were no lessons, no teachers, only love and memory. Tears rolled down the billionaire's face. The truth was now clear to him and impossible to escape. The child on the stage was not just talented. She was the living proof of a past he had tried to forget. The hall remained silent, But the silence was now filled with truth, regret, and a story no one had expected to hear. The billionaire took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, but his emotions were already exposed. He turned to face the audience, a room full of people who had seen him as powerful and unshakable. Now, they saw a man struggling with regret. His voice trembled as he began to speak, and the hall listened carefully. He admitted that many years ago, before wealth and fame, he had been a simple man with big dreams. He spoke about a close friend who had shared those dreams with him, someone who believed in him when no one else did. Together, they had planned a future built on honesty, music, and hard work. But when success came, he chose ambition over loyalty. He confessed that he had walked away from that friend without looking back. He never checked what happened afterward. He never offered help. He convinced himself that leaving was necessary to move forward. Standing there now, he realized how wrong he had been. The cost of his success was a friendship, a life, and years of silence. The maid listened quietly, her hands clasped tightly together. She had never expected this truth to be spoken out loud, especially in front of strangers. The guests sat frozen, no longer rich spectators but witnesses to a painful confession. No one dared interrupt. The billionaire then turned toward the little girl. He lowered himself slightly to meet her eyes and apologized, not just to her, but to the memory of her father. He said the challenge and the money were never meant to be cruel, but he now understood how his words had hurt. His pride had blinded him. He promised to take responsibility for the past. He said that money could not erase regret, but it could help build a better future. His voice broke as he admitted that hearing the music had reminded him of the man he once wanted to be. The hall remained silent, but the feeling had changed. This was no longer about a performance or a bet. It was about truth, accountability, and facing the consequences of one's choices. In that moment, the billionaire was no longer above everyone else. He was simply human, standing in front of the life he had once left behind. The little girl's life changed forever after that unforgettable moment at the piano. Everyone in the hall had been amazed by her talent, and the applause didn't just end when the music stopped, it followed her everywhere. That day, she realized that her courage to play, despite being laughed at first, had opened doors she had never even imagined. Her confidence grew, and she understood that sometimes taking a risk can lead to something wonderful. People started noticing her in ways she had never experienced before. Teachers, musicians, and even strangers praised her talent, and invitations to perform at local events began pouring in. The little girl had always loved music quietly in her room, but now the world was giving her a stage. Her family also felt the change. They had always worried about how she would fit in or whether she would have opportunities, but now they could see that her potential was limitless. They encouraged her to take music seriously, enrolling her in lessons with professional teachers who could guide her. The little girl worked harder than ever, practicing daily, learning new techniques, and discovering the depth of her own talent. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes she felt tired or frustrated, but every note she played reminded her of the moment that had started it all, and that memory kept her motivated. Soon, the recognition she gained led to bigger opportunities. She was invited to perform at concerts, festivals, and even on television. Each performance gave her more confidence, and the nervousness she once felt disappeared, replaced with excitement. She met other talented musicians who became her friends and mentors, and together they inspired each other to reach higher. The little girl began dreaming bigger than she ever had, imagining a future where music wasn't just a hobby but a career, a way to touch the hearts of people all over the world. What started as a simple act of curiosity, to play the piano when no one expected it, had reshaped her entire future. She learned that talent, courage, and passion could change life in ways no one could predict. Her story became an inspiration to others, showing that even small moments of bravery can lead to incredible possibilities. From that day forward, she carried a new sense of purpose, ready to face challenges and embrace every opportunity that came her way, confident that her future was truly changed.